King Spawn is bringing one of the darkest, most iconic comic book characters back to the big screen. But this isn't just another shot at an adaptation, it's a completely new approach that could shake up the entire comic book movie genre. If it all comes together the right way, the film won't just break away from Marvel and DC's familiar formulas, it'll prove that audiences today are hungry for bold, mature, and truly author-driven stories. That's especially relevant right now. The modern comic book audience has grown up. Research shows the average viewer is around 26 years old. These aren't kids or even teens anymore. This is the generation that grew up on Nolan's Batman, first Iron Man, and the early Marvel blockbusters, but now they want something heavier, darker, and more layered. That's exactly what King Spawn has the potential to deliver. The strength of this project is rooted in Todd McFarlane's comics, which were never just about a hero saving the world. They were about the war between heaven and hell, about corruption, human weakness, the lust for power, and the cost of immortality. That's why King Spawn has the chance to break the mold where superheroes are expected to be noble and flawless. Al Simmons, who became Spawn, is the opposite of that. He's an anti-hero, a tragic figure marked by betrayal, death, and the endless struggle for his soul. The movie is being produced by Blumhouse Productions, the studio behind some of the biggest horror hits of the last decade. Jason Blum has been saying for years that he wants to take the company beyond low-budget horror and start building long-term franchises. Their experiment with Five Nights at Freddy's proved that betting on dark popular IPs can pay off huge. The film made serious box office numbers and showed that Blumhouse could handle more than just horror. King Spawn looks like the next big step in that strategy. The script is already in the bag, written by Matt Mixon, Malcolm Spellman, and Scott Silver, the same Silver who co-wrote Joker with Joaquin Phoenix. That lineup tells us the film is aiming for something darker and more adult, not your standard superhero popcorn flick. Todd McFarlane himself is on board as a creative producer, and according to insiders, he's keeping a close eye to make sure the adaptation stays true to the source material. At first, the project was just called Spawn, but it's now officially developing as King Spawn, directly referencing the comic arc of the same name, a sort of soft reboot for the character. That storyline showed Simmons in a new light, as someone who's endured endless betrayals and battles and finds himself caught in a global war between heaven and hell. But this time, he isn't just a pawn, he's a potential king. The story challenges him with a choice: remain a servant of other people's schemes, or seize control of his fate and lead a new generation of spawns. That arc was filled with symbolism and epic scale. It wasn't just demons and angels trading blows, it was about Simmons realizing his true place in the cosmic war. It introduced cults bent on opening the gates of hell, mysterious manipulators pulling strings behind the scenes, and the haunting question of whether a man drenched in blood and cursed for eternity can truly become a leader, a king. It's clear that a lot of those elements are going to make it into the first film. Based on what the creative team has said, the movie won't just lean on action and flashy effects, it'll dive into the philosophical and tragic core of the story. McFarlane has always said that Spawn isn't about saving the world, it's about survival, about fighting for a place in it, and holding on to what little humanity you have left. That's why King Spawn isn't just another comic book adaptation. It's aiming to be a full-on adult superhero drama where horror blends with noir and the action is tied to heavy moral dilemmas. If it all lands, this movie could end up being something like Todd Phillips' Joker, only darker, more mystical, and way more supernatural in tone. The most recent draft of the script, written by Silver, Spellman, and Mixon, has most likely already been locked in. We can tell because Blumhouse officially released the script's title page online, and in Hollywood that usually doesn't happen for nothing. Moves like that typically mean the project is already stepping into real pre-production, things like concept art, budgeting, and laying out how the shoot will unfold. Still, King Spawn is a gamble. Spawn is a cult character, but he's not mainstream. Even though he's had a resurgence thanks to Mortal Kombat, with his iconic look and reputation as a 90s comic book legend, he's still more of a niche anti-hero than a household name like Batman or Spider-Man. For casual moviegoers, he's a bit of an exotic pick, but honestly, that's where the real opportunity lies. Spawn has the range to fit into almost any genre. He works perfectly in dark fantasy, could anchor a horror-tinged war drama, military action, or dive into psychological thriller territory. Even straight-up superhero action isn't out of the question, though it's probably the least interesting route for a character this tragic. Just look back at HBO's animated series. Al Simmons was portrayed as a man who had lost everything, and that sense of raw tragedy is what made the story so powerful and unique. The good news is that all signs point to the movie sticking with that darker, heavier tone. Blumhouse has never been afraid of risk, and Todd McFarlane has stressed more than once that the film will carry a hard R rating. That decision makes perfect sense when you look at today's landscape. Movies like Todd Phillips' Joker and Deadpool and Wolverine proved that adult-rated comic book films don't shrink their audience. They can actually blow up at the box office. Studios no longer see R as a limitation. Blumhouse itself has also shifted gears. For years, the studio's bread and butter was low-budget horror films that could deliver huge returns if they hit. Now, the company is aiming higher, actively investing in bigger and more ambitious projects. King Spawn fits perfectly into that new direction. It's mature, serious, and demands a budget that reflects its scope. Interestingly, the first version of the script was written by McFarlane himself, and it was completely different. In that draft, the main character wasn't even Al Simmons, it was Detective Twitch Williams. McFarlane wanted Twitch, played by Jeremy Renner, to investigate a series of mysterious murders tied to an urban legend about a ghostly figure called Spawn. In that version, Simmons only showed up for about 20 to 30 minutes total, more of a shadowy demon than a lead character. McFarlane openly admitted he went this route because of budget constraints and was even ready to finance the movie himself just to get it made. Those days are long gone. The King Spawn we're getting now is a completely new project. You can pretty much forget the old script and the original cast. Renner is no longer attached, and Twitch most likely won't even show up in the film. What's clear is that the movie is being built around the recent King Spawn arc, borrowing its concepts and themes. That means a whole new approach, new actors, and a proper spotlight on Al Simmons himself. One of the biggest fan debates right now is whether the film will show Spawn's classic origin story or if the studio will follow the modern trend and skip it. In recent years, Hollywood has been steering away from traditional origin stories, but with Spawn, that approach could feel a little off. His identity is inseparable from his tragic past, and cutting that out would rob the audience of the emotional foundation of the character. Al Simmons was a loyal soldier, a patriot who was brutally betrayed by his own people and sent straight to hell. That betrayal and his pact with Malebolgia aren't just details, they're the very backbone of the character. Without those beats, Spawn stops being Spawn. That's why at least the first 10 to 15 minutes of the movie absolutely need to honor those classic elements. Otherwise, the audience won't really grasp the depth of his tragedy or what drives him. Casting adds another layer of intrigue. For nearly a decade, Jamie Foxx has been tied to the role. He was first announced back in 2015 and has repeatedly said in interviews and podcasts that he loves the character and is eager to play him. Personality-wise and charisma-wise, Foxx really does feel like a perfect fit. But here's the catch. Over the years, the project has gone through multiple reboots and complete creative overhauls, so it's entirely possible that Blumhouse and McFarlane could want a fresh perspective and bring in someone new. As of right now, the odds of Jamie Foxx actually suiting up as Spawn feel like a 50-50 gamble. It's also worth keeping in mind that Blumhouse could completely reformat this movie at any stage. The script is now in the hands of different writers, and everything about the project is leaning toward a big-budget blockbuster that's clearly being positioned as the start of a potential franchise. That's why it's still way too early to talk about the final cast or even who's going to direct. What we can say for sure is that Blumhouse sees King Spawn as a major event film, not just some niche experiment. Todd McFarlane himself recently mentioned that the studio is looking to bring in an A-list director, someone seasoned and proven, not a first-time filmmaker chasing an experimental vision. That alone tells you how seriously they're treating this project. From day one, they're aiming for a film built to play on the global stage. Story-wise, going with Spawn's origin is hands down the smartest move for the first chapter. This film needs to introduce audiences to Al Simmons, his betrayal, his death, and his transformation into Spawn. Sure, a lot of modern comic book movies try to skip straight to building universes and setting up sequels, but here it's more important to tell one complete, self-contained story from start to finish. The comics have enough lore for at least a dozen movies, so the sequels and spin-offs can come later. The first film should stand on its own, hit hard, and leave audiences satisfied. Right now, the project looks to be in the concept art and early prep phase. After that will come casting, locking in a director, and heading into production. And Blumhouse is known for moving fast when they want to. Sometimes projects sit around for years and then suddenly get greenlit, funded, and pushed into shooting within months. So there's a real chance Spawn could follow that same trajectory. If everything goes smoothly and there aren't any major delays, King Spawn could realistically hit theaters around late 2027. That's just a forecast for now, but based on how ambitious the creators are and how much momentum is building, this finally feels like the moment where the project could break free from development hell and actually make its way to the big screen.